guys, what's up? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make corn flatbread. I call it cornbread, but it's nothing like the cornbread that you know. It's more like a white pita bread, but it has a little bit of corn flour in it. It's really good. And this recipe just came about because I need to use up our corn flour, so I just started adding it to the white pita bread, and it tastes delicious. So to make this recipe, you need corn flour, about 1/3 of a cup, 2 cups of white flour. I think this is pizza flour in this jar, but any white flour will work fine. A tablespoon of salt, a tablespoon of sugar, a tiny bit of oil just to coat the dough, so like a drop or two. Any oil will work fine. And lastly, yeast. We are using fresh yeast in this recipe, so it's about 1/8 of a block. You can also use a little packet of the instant dry yeast. That'll work well too, but we really like using the fresh yeast. So first thing you want to do is boil some water. So I boiled some water in the kettle, and then I'm going to add a cup of boiling water to 1/3 of a cup of corn flour and just mix it together in a bowl. Just want to whisk it together, mix it as best as you can, and let it rest for around 20 minutes so it has some time to cool down. So while we wait for the corn flour water mixture to cool off, I'm going to get the dry ingredients ready and just set them aside. So you want 2 cups of white flour and 1 teaspoon of salt. So now I'm just going to get the yeast and sugar ready for the lukewarm water. You just want a teaspoon of sugar and then 1/8 of a block of fresh yeast. So then I'm going to crumble it into this little cup here. Little pig. So in non-cooking related news, I am soaking a bunch of lemon peels in this jar with white vinegar, and in a few weeks I will strain them out and I will have a nice natural cleaner to use in our house. Because I was using just straight up vinegar, but that's kind of smelly, so we're going to infuse it with lemon. We did this before in Krakow and it works well.
Yeah, it was fun.
Aika, do you want to see? Oh, she's scared of it? Aika, just a jar.
Put it on the floor.
See? Maybe she can smell it.
Probably can.
It's like, ew, gross. She's like... So the yeast needs lukewarm water to activate, so I'm going to mix some of the boiling water with cold water to get the right temperature. You just want it to be lukewarm, like a comfortable bath. That's how it was described to me. We might need more water later in the recipe, so I'll use this extra water too. That's good. And then you just want to mix it together so the yeast dissolves. And that sugar is also for the yeast to eat. And then we'll just let this sit for around 5 minutes so the yeast can activate. So first thing, I will dump the corn mixture into the flour, mix it slightly, and then add the yeast mixture to that. Mix everything together, and then we will probably have to add more flour and a little more water. You want the dough to be somewhat sticky and not too dry. So it looks like it needs a little more water, so I'm going to add in a touch of that lukewarm water. You don't want to add in cold water, and you don't want it to be too hot because it'll kill the yeast. And once the dough starts to come together, you can use your hand to just knead it together. Oh, it's still a little wet. You don't want it to be too sticky or too dry. So it really just comes down to a feel. You'll just have to practice a few times and then see how the bread turns out to know what's the right consistency of the dough. So this dough looks good to me. It'll soften up a little bit too as we let it rest. So now I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in the bowl and on top of the dough just so it doesn't stick to the bowl as it proofs. You really don't need much of this oil, just like a drop will be fine. But I've tried this bread with and without the oil, and the oil seems to help with the texture. Something like that. Oops. It's fine. We normally don't eat oil, but I will make an exception for the bread so it doesn't stick.
But you can still make it if you don't want to put oil.
Yeah, you can. It's still possible to make without the oil, but when I was testing it, it just comes out better with a little bit of oil coating it. Because it helps with the like elasticity of the dough. Alright, so now I'm going to cover this with the towel and put it in a warm place and let it proof for an hour and a half to 2 hours because you want this to double in size. So yesterday we did it for an hour and a half and the bread turned out really nice. I'm going to do that again today. So now we'll just go take Ica for a walk, chill a little bit, and just let the bread do its thing. So it's been an hour and a half, so we're going to check out the dough. It pretty much doubled in size, actually.
It did.
That's what you want. You can put your finger in and it like stays. We'll just sprinkle a little flour on there. Doesn't stick. Then I'm going to punch it down. See how it doesn't stick because of the oil?
It's like plasma.
I was going to say cheese. So now I'm just going to cut this into 8 pieces and ball them up. I try to put it in like a rectangle type shape, so when I cut it, they're about the same. These aren't quite the same size. The middle ones are bigger than the outside ones, but that's okay. We'll survive. I'm used to like making things like bread and pastry where everything has to be exactly the same. Because like we would actually weigh the dough to make sure every bread is the same. So that's why I'm weird. So I'm just going to gently ball them up. Oh, this one's a big one. Look at that.
Good. That's mine.
It's a big one. At one of the places I worked at, we actually had a machine that would cut the dough into shapes, like into rectangles. You'd like put the whole thing of dough, which would be like this big. You close it and it goes goo-goo, and it cuts it from the bottom up. Isn't that cool?
What noise would it make?
Shut up. Goo-goo. That's what it sounded like. It was like pressurized. It was kind of scary to use. So now I'm just going to cover these up with the towel so they don't dry out, and we'll let them sit for like 20 minutes or so, just so they proof a little longer. There we go. I guess I can do the other food too. Prep our dinner foods. We're having leftovers tonight. Alright, it's been around 20 minutes. Check them out. They're puffier now. And now I'm just going to roll them out. But I'll leave them covered as I'm rolling them so they don't dry out. Just very gently rolling them. Not pushing too hard. Something like that looks good to me. So it's not too thick, not too thin. And we're going to be baking these 3 at a time, so I want to make sure they can fit into the pan. So this is the size I like. So then I'm just going to set this aside and roll out the rest of them. Just always handle the dough very gently. Keep it covered. Someone's hungry. You can hear your belly rumbling. Now I'm just going to preheat the pan on a high heat for 5 minutes.
Ica.
So you want to bake these breads for around 2 minutes on each side, between 2 and 2.5 minutes. So I normally just put 3 in the pan, bake them for around 2 minutes. They'll start to puff up a little bit, and then I flip them over and just check them to make sure they're not getting burned on the other side. So it's around 4 or 5 minutes. You just have to watch them. You could probably bake these in the oven too. I would just roll them a little thinner and then just bake them at like 350 or like 375-ish. Probably 350. I bet they would be nice and crispy if you baked them in the oven. But we don't have an oven.
Nope.
This is our oven.
Don't really need one either.
No. Don't want one right now either. Looking good. Flip them over. Ow! And they're very similar to the white pita bread recipe. They just don't puff in the same way because of the corn, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Corn weighs them down a little. Hooray! Bread!
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that.
Whoa.
Ooh, very warm.
That looks good.
Mm-hmm. Mmm. Really good. I think this is better than last night's.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Do you want some?
Sure. Very fluffy.
Yeah, that's really nice. Very good.
Yay. Let's eat. Cinema set up.
Yes, let's eat now.
Thanks for making.
No problem. Thanks for filming.